Well, welcome to the section on buying a new home in a strata building, or as people commonly know it as a condo building. We're going to be talking today for buyers about the different parts of the buying process, documents and records you should be looking for, and eventually what happens once you become a condo owner, and all of the things you can do to make your investment very successful in the long term in your new home. Well, we'll start with meet the instructor, so this should be entertaining. I guess a name would help, right? Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Well, my name's Tony Gioventu. I'm the Executive Director of the Condominium Home Owners Association of British Columbia, and I have been doing this role for 25 years. I started back in the late 90s when we were looking at and participating with Barrett commissions when we were reconstructing buildings in the province. And it gave me an opportunity to realize that we needed strong consumer protection. We needed consumers to understand what they were purchasing and, more importantly, how they were going to make the best of their homes and how they were going to protect their investments and how we were going to transform in communities. So from the perspective of where I've worked for the last 25 years, and my interest and my focus has been very much on housing and how we can make housing one of the best investments within our lifestyles. For many of us in British Columbia, it's a situation of living in multifamily developments. And in British Columbia, we have over 32,000 condominium strata corporations. And these strata corporations are everything from duplexes to 11-unit townhouses, to hundreds of apartment buildings, hundreds of units in multiple apartment buildings within communities. They might be resort communities. We have beautiful resort communities with golf courses, ski hills, marinas, riding stables, airports. So we've truly in British Columbia embraced the sense of community and multifamily living. And it's been very much my focus as I've worked with consumers across the province in every part of the region of the province to really strive for the best choice of living and to make the living cycle for people within multifamily homes a real success. It's been a real pleasure working with consumers across the province, especially as we reach outside of just the Lower Mainland as well, to get into smaller communities that, you find a duplex that is a strata corporation tucked into the Kootenays somewhere in a remote part of the Rocky Mountains or somewhere up north or somewhere in the Gulf Islands, and the value of the home that this actually brings to these people in this community, and understanding how joint use or condo living or living within a strata corporation in a multifamily way is really beneficial for everyone. So it's been very fulfilling for me seeing the success in all of these communities, as well as seeing the success of everyone within their own communities. I have lived in probably 5 separate different types of condos, from a 4-plex townhouse complex right up to now, and I am the president of our own strata council, right up to now a 250-unit high-rise building. So, the combination of multifamily living is something that many of us truly embrace. It's density that works incredibly well for all of us, and the benefits when they're well exercised of joint negotiation and the affordability and the cost for home ownership is just so incredible when you're looking at some of the larger communities that it really is truly rewarding for everybody who purchases a home in these communities. I'm an avid sailor, still have a boat here on the coast, and enjoy every opportunity to be on the water whenever possible. And now I have a family and an active life between Ottawa and Vancouver, so I commute a fair bit, which is also a pleasure. So I still get to enjoy the benefit of seasons as well as the coast, and the benefit of sailing and working with everyone here on the coast. And I'm also an active dog owner. So I have a 175-pound Leon Burger that is a wonderful dog that basically treats us like his royal servants. One of the great opportunities that I had back in 2002, was being approached from the Vancouver Sun and Province to start a weekly column on housing for strata and condo living in British Columbia. And since then, I've been writing a weekly column in response to questions from the public, and we're now approaching 1,000 columns in 2002 and 20 years. And it's amazing the variations of what occur within communities and the use, and all of it is interactive. And influenced by the different people who live within these communities. So, everyone's case is different. Everyone's situation is different. All the communities and the properties are different. But there's so much rich information that can help people as they go through this to make their investment really, truly beneficial. But working with the public has been probably one of the greatest pleasures that I've had, and especially ignited through the column that's been on a weekly basis across the province. For many of us, our home is our greatest investment, probably sometimes our only investment for the first-time buyer, and oftentimes it's something that we look at as our sanctuary for everything that we need. How we look at our home really reflects in many ways what our expectations of our lifestyle is going to be as well. Strata living, condo living is different than living in a detached house. When you live in a condominium, you have to remember that your home is not your castle. You are part of a collective of owners. You jointly share things like the exterior of buildings and the roadways and the common property. What you need to think about when you're purchasing, though, is that condo living, strata living, whether it's a duplex, whether it's an apartment building, townhouses, or a bare land strata, you need to think about your lifestyle and what you expect to do. Are you a person who is basically going to come home at the end of the day, lock your door, you have no interest in gardening, you're going to, use your home as your resting place and your quiet place? Or are you a person that wants to live in a vibrant community that has recreation facilities like a golf course or swimming pool and gymnasiums and meeting rooms and social functions where you're going to interact with other people? We have communities that have workshops where there are woodworking facilities and active ongoing programs where people who live in residence have the ability to do these types of home projects. Do you have a family? Are you going to have enough space? Do your children have active space or active function that are going to produce noise? And it's wonderful when your children are growing up that they're learning to play the violin or the bagpipes, or that they are active basketball players. But is your community that you're looking at conducive to this? There's so many varieties of communities to choose from that there's one that will fit virtually anyone if you take the time when you're looking around your community. Look for space. Look for things like access. Does your family own more than one car? Are you a family without vehicles? So transit will be important. Where are schools going to be located? Is this a condition for you? Are you a family that likes to open your garage door, take your bikes and be off biking on the mountainside 5 minutes away? Or are you a downtown family that likes to be able to have the restaurant next door for the convenience of access and the movie theater close by? Think of all of your lifestyle functions and those things that appeal to you as well. That'll help you to determine what type of neighborhood, but not only that, what type of building that you want to live in. You may find that entertaining is very important for you, and a smaller building but that has very large rooftop patios and decks for entertaining would be a wonderful choice for your family. You may be a home-based business and you need an additional space within your space to be able to operate your home-based business or to do your services in home without much disruption, but yet separate it somewhat from the rest of your living space. Make a checklist. What are the things that are important to you? Does the home that you're looking at and the neighborhood that you're looking at, does it meet that checklist? Does it meet a function of how your family cycle works? Affordability, look at all the costs associated. It's not just your strata fees that you're going to be paying, but look at the long-term effects of living in that neighborhood. What will your taxes look like? How are the utilities for the building shared? Are there additional costs or surcharges for utilities, and how they're segregated? And look at the overall kind of structure of how your community, how this community is going to work for you. It's very helpful to understand clearly what your expectations are going to be versus what the home that you're looking at can deliver for you. And it will give you a much better rewarding relationship as you move forward. So let's talk a little bit more about the situation where you live in a strata that your home is not your castle. We all have this impression that it's my home, I'm going to do what I want, and no one's going to do anything about it. But when you live in a strata community, that is not the case. Even in a bare land strata, and in a bare land it looks like a conventional neighborhood, conventional subdivision, and your home is on your strata lot, but the strata corporation has the ability, whether it's a bare land, a duplex, a high-rise building, a townhouse complex, the strata corporation has the ability to adopt bylaws that regulate how we use our homes. Even things like the color of our home, what type of roofing we might put on our bare land unit. There are many conditions that can be imposed, and the intent of this is to keep our communities looking fairly uniform and collective in approach, so that we keep the property values and the appearance at the best levels possible. Your home is not your castle for apartment living, for high-rise living, for townhouses. Essentially means once you're past the wall of your unit and you're into another unit or the outside area of the building, you're into an area that we call common property. And many of the facilities within those areas, such as the plumbing and the electrical, the doors and the windows, they're all part of the common property of the corporation, and you're not permitted to alter or change those without the consent of the strata corporation. That's what it means your home is not your castle. You can't just cut a hole in a wall. You can't just simply cut a hole in a ceiling and put in a skylight. You don't have the authority to tear up all the flooring and install new flooring over top of another unit without the consent of the strata corporation. The way the legislation is structured, all of the components that were installed by the owner-developer originally are called fixtures and assets of the strata corporation. Those original fixtures are insured by the corporation. So if there was a flood, those components would be covered under the strata corporation's insurance. That's one of the great benefits, knowing that there is always coverage. However, to change those, you're going to have to get the consent of your strata corporation and your strata council. This is what it means it's not your castle. What you do in your home affects other people, and collectively, we basically all function under a unified sense of rules and bylaws. So we have uniformity, we protect each other's investments, we prevent individuals from doing modifications or alterations in one home that's going to adversely affect another home. And this is how it affects our investment as we live in condo buildings. We're basically working in a collective interest to protect our investment and our asset for everybody's basic needs. Whether you're buying an existing building that's pre-owned by someone else, or whether you're buying a new condo, or whether you're buying a pre-sale, there are some pretty basic rules to follow. The first rule of thumb, of course, obviously, is you want to do a very good site visit, and you want to obtain the documents. There are documents available for any of the three options: a pre-sale, a brand new building, or existing buildings. It's critical that you read the documents. And if you don't understand them, consult with your lawyer and consult with your agent. Ask questions, get your responses in writing. And if you don't understand, ask more questions. Don't just assume that what someone is telling you is correct. They may not have more information than you have. The documents, such as minutes of meetings of existing buildings, will give you a bit of a story of how the building runs, the kind of decisions that are made, the type of issues that the community is facing. They don't tell everything, as minutes will often just be decisions or results of decisions of the strata councils. But look at minutes of meetings from the annual reports. if there's special general meetings. A depreciation report is an incredibly valuable document. It's a document that basically summarizes all of the inventory of an existing building, what condition it's in, how much life is left in it, when it's anticipated to be replaced, and what the projected costs are going to be. So when you look at a depreciation report for an existing building, it should give you a pretty good view into the future of when the roof on the building has to be replaced and what the anticipated cost is going to be. So if you're in a 108 unit townhouse complex, for example, and the depreciation report projects that in 2028 the roofs have to be totally replaced, and the projected cost of the roofing is going to be $1.8 million, you have a sense that each townhouse unit is going to have to come up with the share of $1.8 million. And that gives you a projection of cost. From there, you look at the financial reports of this community. Maybe they only have a few $100,000 in their reserve funds. You can anticipate that in the next 6 to 7 years that this community is going to have to plan for the replacement of the roofs. And many of them do. They start increasing their contributions to the reserve funds. There may be some special levies in the future, but anticipate that some of these costs are going to be coming along. As an owner, you can save yourself by planning for the future. And when special levies come along, you're prepared for those types of things. Ask for engineering reports. And engineering reports are much more than just the condition of the building. They may be environmental. There may be sound reports that came up as a result of issues. There could be geologic conditions that arose that had to be addressed. But any of the engineering reports that are available are also a valuable document to look at. They can give you a great sense of security in the building that you're looking at if they come up without any conditions that exist. The insurance coverage on a building is critical as well. Insurance will give you a very good indication not only of whether the buildings themselves have had conditions that have resulted in a number of insurance claims, may have had nothing to do with buildings, but there may be lifestyle issues within a community that have resulted in a number of insurance claims. Excessive insurance claims do impose a higher risk for buyers, and they will impose a higher cost. So, you look at the cost of insurance within the annual budget. You look at the insurance coverage, look at the insurance deductibles. If the deductibles for things like water escape or fire are $100,000 per event or $250,000 per event, it's an indication of a community that has had a number of claims. And that can be very costly and expose buyers to some potentially high costs. Going back to the concept that your home is not your castle, if you do something within your unit that causes an insurance claim, such as you overflow a bathtub, or you do an alteration that's not that results in damages to the building and an insurance claim, you can be responsible for that insurance deductible, and that insurance deductible can easily be $100,000, $250,000, and even $500,000 in some cases. So it's a very prudent measure as you're looking. Read the documents of the Strata Corporation. Look closely at the details. We always say the devil's in the details. Here's where you can actually get yourself into a little bit of trouble if you're not aware of what is going on within these communities. Another thing to look at when you're reading the documents is take a close look at the information certificate. An information certificate is a requirement in the legislation that strata corporations must provide. And the information certificate itself gives you a checklist of things like how much are the strata fees, how much money is in the reserve funds, where's my parking space in my storage locker? Very critical things that you need to know because these are services and facilities you're going to rely on. Another item you're going to see there are if there are any judgments or decisions against the Strata Corporation. And these might be decisions from the Supreme Court, could be Human Rights Tribunal decisions, they could be from the Civil Resolution Tribunal. And if there are enough of them, it might be worth looking at what those implications are. The community itself may have had a history of problems. They may be resolved now, might not be an issue, but they may also be ongoing, which can be a chronic issue for you. The Form B is a document that gives you a very short snapshot of information and time of what is allocated to my unit. Knowing where your parking spaces are or where the storage lockers are is valuable as a sense of I'm coming in, what do I have? But remember, your home's not your castle. Odds are you don't own parking spaces and storage lockers. They're probably common property, and then they may be reallocated possibly at some point in the future. So you want to confirm in writing not only which parking spaces and storage lockers, but how are they allocated? Is there any security to them, or is there a possibility they could change in the future? And that is certainly the source of problems for many owners. On a pre-sale of a building that is not yet constructed, it's not possible to determine these items. But it is possible to establish that I will be allocated 2 parking spaces. I will be allocated a storage locker that's 8 feet by 10 feet on a certain floor or in a certain location. As for a new building that is currently being marketed, you can determine quite closely which spaces are allocated, which storage lockers are allocated. Even the property and its allocation of how they're designated can be determined. So again, this comes back to confirming in writing everything that's important for you. You've read the documents, you have a list of questions. Your agent, the seller, the owner developer who's selling units, have them confirm everything in writing as you go through this. And as you get these documents, store them in a safe place. Don't throw them out. Don't just toss it off because, well, I've had it in writing, now it's all done. It's important that you keep the records and the documents should any future issues arise. So now we've purchased our new home. What do we do to make this our best purchase ever, and we make this a great investment? The best advice I can give everyone is stay engaged and participate with your community. Once you've purchased your home, knowing what's happening, supporting your strata council, participating in meetings, taking an active role as a council member or volunteering for committees, and ensuring that your properties are well maintained, well managed, well secured, is probably the best thing that any investor can possibly do. It's as much your interest as a buyer to actively participate in the running and the operation of your strata corporation. Don't just assume a group of strata council people who've been there for 7 years are going to take care of this for you. Everyone has a responsibility to be active. Strata council members are volunteers, and they require, in many cases, the assistance of managers and consultants. And they're always looking for strata council members to be newly engaged, to be educated. Your role as a strata council is to ensure that your strata corporation is complying with the Strata Property Act. You're enforcing your bylaws. You're acting in the best interest of the safety and the operations of your strata corporation. And your bylaws and your rules are being enforced to the fairness and to the equity of everybody in your property. That's your role as a strata council. If you do this and you look at long-term planning for maintenance and inspections and renewals and operations plans, you'll have a very rewarding cycle of owning within a strata community. Unfortunately, many stratas fail to develop operations plans, fail to develop routine maintenance schedules and good funding, and are often acting in a reactive way to property failures or to conditions that arise within their communities. Those are more costly, they take more time, they result in conflict within communities. A well-managed strata corporation really is a pleasure to live in as a community. And many of our communities across the province, from smaller neighborhood communities in our rural areas right down to our larger metropolitan areas, are really wonderful investments because they're incredibly well run with their strata councils, with their volunteers. The owners are engaged. The management company is engaged in a structure of operations with rarely any conditions or problems. So there's an opportunity here for you as a new buyer to become engaged in a positive way to help and contribute to the good operation and the function of your strata corporation. And it's the best advice I can give everyone is stay active, stay engaged, and participate and support your community. And it will return really great rewards for your investment. A little bit of a pep talk. Because strata councils are volunteers, they rely on a number of services. There are many associations and government services available within the province of BC. We're actually very fortunate in the number of services that are available. And they provide educational programs, checklists, tools for planning for the function and operation as strata councils. There are buying guides for investors. There are associations that from the Real Estate Association, from consumer associations, from home builders and community associations, all of which provide some very good resources. They're resources that are available online at no charge, and I encourage everyone who is considering purchasing, but who also is on a strata council and an owner, engage in the resources that the associations provide for you. They provide ongoing education and advisory services as well, and they do make a significant contribution to your effect as your role as an owner or as a strata council member. Investors also can rely on many of the resources because as they interact with strata councils, they have an impact on how you use your property, when the costs that are associated, and of course, how to avoid disputes. If you can avoid disputes before they occur, it's certainly much less costly, and your communities will function in a much more harmonized way. Through the home builders associations, there are resources on buying guides before you purchase. Through the consumer associations, what you need to know about different parts of the legislation. In British Columbia, the Strata Property Act and the regulations applies directly as the governance model for how strata corporations run, how they operate, what their legal options are, how they function, even how they wind up someday if the community is thinking of selling. So engage within the information that's available within the associations, and you'll find that there are some excellent resources that will help support you as a volunteer, but they'll help to support you as a strata community as well. So the real value of homeownership. So asking yourself this question, if you could go back in time and tell yourself about the real estate market, what would you probably say? The advice I would probably give to myself would have been, don't hesitate to purchase. You should have purchased the unit that you looked at. Why didn't you purchase the unit that you looked at? We've known in British Columbia that the value of ownership, because especially in the Lower Mainland, the limit of space and the demands that have continued from the 80s well into where we are today, have only done one thing with the real estate market and with condos, and that is that the value of the condos have come up. It's been a very good investment for many people, and certainly we've had some challenges with buildings and building designs as we've grown, but even those have recovered to be very good investments for the public. So, one of the great things that I think going back in time and looking forward into the future is find the home that you think is really the most appropriate for you, and then move forward with it. But as I was doing that, I was thinking I probably would have become more active in my strata communities as well. Given who I am and the role that I play, I probably have been as active as a person could be. But for the average buyer, I think being more engaged is something that is incredibly valuable. Many annual meetings that I attend for strata corporations often have less than 30% of the owners attending, which is really inappropriate. And it's unfair to the small portion of people who really give their volunteer time to manage their properties on behalf of everyone. And in retrospect, I think my advice to everyone today would be stay more engaged, participate more. Even if all you do is attend the annual general meeting, but you all attend, it makes a considerable difference to the function of your communities and to the decision making of your communities. The other advice I would give everyone is look at what your costs are. Take that value on a monthly basis of your mortgage, your taxes, your utilities. Add 5% of it and save the 5% aside for future repairs, maintenance, and operations. As an individual person, you don't have to rely on the strata to save for the future. If they're not doing it, there's nothing preventing you as an owner to start your own savings for future maintenance and repairs of the building. You will be faced with special levies. They can be costly, they can be daunting as you go forward. And if you can save a small amount every month, maybe it's another $40 above what your strata fees are, In 5 or 10 years, it makes a remarkable difference when that special levy comes along for new elevators, the upgrade to the pool, the roofing system needs to be changed. A variety of these costs that we really anticipate, but we don't really know what the cost is ultimately going to be. I would look at that for the future as an owner, and what I would say is a small savings, engagement within my community, and when you think it's the right condo, make the purchase, because you probably won't regret it. It'll probably be the greatest purchase that you've ever made. Many people who make the right purchase in their condos live in them for decades. They're very happy. They're happy with their communities, where they're going to live, how their communities operate. And that will definitely make a big difference for your investment in the long term. So the next question that we're going to deal with is, I'm thinking of purchasing a unit through a pre-sales marketing program in my neighborhood in Metro Vancouver. Who do I go to get advice? So a pre-sale is essentially a concept. It's a site, a location, or a hole in the ground. There may be a high-rise of 200 units that's being built on this location. They're not constructed yet. I have nothing to buy. So what is a pre-sale? And a pre-sale is a contract, essentially, that says, when this building is finished, I agree that I will purchase the unit. And then all the terms and the conditions of that contract are laid out, which become transferred to my purchase. How much? How many parking spaces will I have? If any, where will there be electric vehicle charging stations? What do I have for storage lockers? What's the size of my unit? What the finishings will look like? What the eventual cost is, or if there are any implications to the cost, could it potentially increase or decrease? All of these terms and conditions of the contract. On a pre-sale marketing program, the person we recommend you speak to is your lawyer, because this is a contract, not a purchase sale agreement. And you need to understand the implications of everything on a pre-sale marketing program. You have 7 days after you've given a deposit for a pre-sale marketing program to change your mind. So if you've done you've walked by the site on a Saturday afternoon and you've really been impressed with the marketing program and what's being proposed, by all means, you can provide a deposit check. You can get the documents and the records, make an appointment to see your lawyer the following week, and go through the document closely and make sure you understand all of the implications of this contract. There are some conditions, many conditions, such as the possible increase in sale price as a result of inflation of products that are not available, or change of products, or changes in the market or transactions, how your parking is allocated, how your storage lockers are allocated, the finishings within your units, when this building is supposed to be finished, but what happens if it's delayed, which is often common because of conditions within the markets that no one can control. So all of these terms and conditions are part of a pre-sales marketing program. It's ideal that you understand fully what those implications are, and many of the units are sold through pre-sales marketing programs. But if you have any questions, talk to your lawyer. Look at the terms and conditions so that you fully understand what those implications are going to be. If you're looking at an existing building, but it's a new building, and you have questions, you have several parties you can deal with. You can deal with an agent, so you bring your agent along through the purchase. You can deal with the sales or the marketing team in the new development. Again, ask questions, get answers in writing. Don't just assume what somebody is telling you may be true or accurate. There could be different terms or conditions, even for units within the building. So if you're looking at Unit 501 and you're asking questions about 501 in relationship to parking and storage lockers, make sure that your questions and the responses are in relationship to Unit 501. You may find that the penthouse units have different uses or different access. They may have different elevators, different servicing, different security. So it's critical that you ask questions as you go through this. Also, if you're looking at existing homes when you're purchasing, again, speak to the agent who is representing you with respect to the existing homes. Insist upon questions and answers in writing. An email is fine. It becomes part of a trail of documents that you could use in the event that there's a potential misunderstanding. If you're looking at also a purchase within a community that may be a bit more complicated, you may have an apartment building, and there are many of them now in the province. So here we have a condo apartment style building in a high rise, which sits on top of a hotel, which sits on top of a shopping center, which sits on top of a public parking garage. There are a number of relationships between all of these different property owners and airspace parcels that may need some legal understanding to know what the implications may be to your purchase. These can be very complicated communities from the respect of property ownership, and it's helpful to understand what the implications are for every one of those. So you have a choice of individuals that you can talk to. You can speak to your lawyer, you can speak to a sales marketing team in new buildings, you can speak to your agent, which may be necessary to gather more information, records and documents from the Strata Corporation, but ultimately ensure that you've consulted with someone, but always keep the rule of thumb. Ask your questions in writing, get your answers in writing, and maintain those records and those documents as you go forward. Okay, so if you're thinking of your home, or if you're thinking as your purchase as an investment, as an investment, strata properties become excellent sources of income. They become a very good source of investment. But it also means that you need to think about your lifestyle and your function of who's going to manage that investment. Are you going to do it directly for tenants? Are you going to hire an agent who's going to manage it for you? And remember, as the owner of that investment home, you still have the responsibilities to your strata community. You still will be voting at meetings. You will still be making decisions. You'll still be paying the bills. You'll still be ensuring that the buildings are properly maintained and repaired so that your investment is protected. It's important to understand as an investment, however, that if you're intending to rent your home, there are two different types of strata corporations based on a time period in history. So every strata corporation that was created before 2010 is subject to what we call a rental disclosure statement. That rental disclosure statement exempts any investors from rental bylaws only if the investor was the first purchaser. So if you're a subsequent purchaser of that home, there is no exemption. Now, it may not affect your investment, as that strata community might not have a bylaw that limits the number of rentals in the building, but that could potentially change and affect your investment. Buildings that were built after 2010 had a rental disclosure filed, and on the rental disclosure, it gave a time period for how long units would be exempt. So all the units in the building would be exempt for a period of 100 years, meaning that no rental bylaw could affect that. That is the more secure of an investment in the sense that the strata corporation can't change the use of your property. So your investment is basically clear for those homes that were built and registered after 2010, January 1st, 2010, and had a valid rental disclosure attached to them. So as an investor, it's important to understand that date in that time in history and understand there could be changes to how you use your home. Another type of investment is often short-term accommodations. With short-term accommodations, there are no exemptions, and a community at any point can adopt bylaws that prohibit short-term accommodations. So it's important to be aware that as an investor in a strata property, you don't have total independent use. You may be subject to bylaws or rules that can affect how you use, if you use your property for short-term accommodations, and that could ultimately be ended at some point. It's worth considering as an investor what the implications of those conditions are. You may also be an investor who's just purchased a unit for the purpose of speculation, and you have no intention of renting it. But be mindful that there is still vacant homes taxing that will apply to this situation. And that can change, that can increase, can decrease, but there can be conditions imposed on that as well, both by the province and by the local government and how you use your homes. Always check with the regulations with respects to short-term accommodations and for rentals. and for vacant homes taxes with local governments and with the provincial government as you move forward and before you execute your purchase. It is different for different areas of the province. The rates may be different. How you use your property is going to be different for each and every strata corporation across the province. So it's important that you look closely as an investor before you purchase what the implications are going to be. And remember that magic date, January 1st, 2010. Anything before is subject to changes that could affect your ability to rent. Anything after applies to the strata lot itself, and the extensions may be exempt for a very long period of time.